So hey there, fellow YouTubers, Frank Bush here again. So a couple videos ago, I made a simple do-it-yourself modular Ropecraft system using tarred bank line, which is, you can see sitting here. And in this video, I want to show kind of how to do some more advanced techniques when it comes to using that when you're out in the field. So I've got some bamboo here, and I've got the modular Ropecraft system, and I'll shift camera angles and we'll start to go through doing a build out with it. So if you're interested in kind of advanced techniques when it comes to using this equipment, stay tuned. So, and if you haven't seen the previous videos, this is the modular Ropecraft system that I have. This is the tarred bank one. I've done a couple different versions of using modular Ropecraft systems on my channel. This one's kind of really the do-it-yourself, simple, most basic one. It only takes about an hour or two to put together. And I'll shift the camera back and show kind of the full, what a single unit is and what they look like and that kind of thing. But I also have a Kevlar version of this, which is far more advanced, took more time to build, it's stronger and everything else. But either one of those systems can easily work used to build these types of constructs. So like I say, I'll just kind of shift camera angles and give myself a bit more kind of screen space to show you one of these individual units, and then we'll just get on to the assembly of the frame structure that I want to show in this example. Yes? So like I say, I'll just grab a single one of these components, and I know it's black cordage, so it's difficult to see, so I'll try to keep this in the camera the best I can. But and like I say, there's a full detailed video, so if you don't know how these are made and that kind of stuff, you can go back and watch that previous video. It'll show you. It's really elementary, and it's an easy project you can do around camp. But this is a single one of these units now to give you an idea of, I have a loop that sits on the one end. There's 4 overhand knots that come along the line that's been doubled up to create little kind of pockets and knots, almost like a jungle knot. But then it goes out into a 1 foot long strip of the cordage with nothing on it, and then the same kind of thing on the other side. So you've got your overhand knots here, 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 and here, and then it just comes to a loop in the end. So hopefully that gives you an idea of how simple these little units are. And then like I said, given that they're a modular system, I actually have like 20 of these sitting in this pile over here, and we can use them either in combination with each other or as individual components to form and do things. So like I say, I'll shift camera angles and we'll just get on with actually doing the build out using these things. Yes? So in the first example I want to show, and I've shown this in many different previous videos that I've done when it comes to bushcraft and that kind of stuff, but in essence I want to take 3 of these bamboo pieces that I have, and I want you to keep this in mind as we go through the video. This entire construct is scalable, and you can step it up to any size you want. So you can go with longer sticks that are thicker, or, you know, move right up to full-size logs and all that kind of stuff. You know, I wouldn't recommend using the tarred bank line for, you know, more log-size stuff. I'd use more of the Kevlar system, but I just want you to have it in mind of this system is really flexible, and it's totally scalable when it comes to its design. But like I say, I've got a single one of these individual modular Ropecraft system components now, and in the design and build out of this, you know, in the do-it-yourself video of this, I showed how you can kind of do some advanced techniques when it comes to using this as a unit. But one of the things is we want to turn this strip now into being a loop. So I'm just going to take one of the pre-existing loops that sits on the end here. I'm going to roll it over on itself and just pull its end through as such. Hopefully you're seeing that. So it's almost like a simple cow's hitch or something, really. And then now that I've got that loop formed, I want to take the other end of this modular unit, and I just want to stick it through there past the first knot, and then I want to just pull that tight and apply tension so that it's locked on there. And now what that gives me is a loop now that's locked, it's not going anywhere, and it's got a little tag loop that sits onto the end. So I'll step the camera back so I can give this more justice, and the thinking really is we're just gonna use this loop now to whip together a tripod really rapidly. Yeah, so like I say, let me shift camera angles and I'll show you that in detail. Okay, so like I say, I've got that loop of cordage now, and it's locked. It's not gonna loosen free or any of that business. You know, it's a stable loop. So what I'm gonna do is turn around and just roll it and double it up on itself, You say all I did was kind of give it a twist and then fold it back on itself to create just a single larger loop that's doubled up, and it's got that little loop on the side. And all I'm going to do now is these 3 pieces of bamboo, I'm just going to slide that double loop over all 3 of them as such. So it's really, really simple. There's nothing to it. And I'm going to have it be that these double loops are about, you know, a hand span, maybe a little less, 5-6 inches, that kind of thing, you know, in from the one end, and that way we've got a bit of room to work with. And I'll have to shift the camera angle back a bit to show you the next step, yeah? But as you can see, I'll walk through it one more time. It's really simple. I just had that loop, I doubled it up on itself, I picked up all 3 of the units, moved it in, and set it. Really simple, nothing to it. So I'll shift my camera angles and we'll keep moving, yeah? It's still relatively early in the day, so I'm trying to position myself to not create too many shadows and that kind of stuff, yeah? Just as a kind of side note. But so like I said, we've got these 3 bamboo pieces just laying side by each with each other, and we've got that double loop on there, and all I need to do now is kind of space them out so there's a bit of room to breathe, if you will, between them. And I just want to kind of pinch and hold both sides of this, and I want to roll the middle bamboo one and twist it onto itself as such. And I want to keep doing that and make sure that everything kind of stays in alignment. But I want to keep rolling that middle stick over and over again on itself. So kind of pick it up, I'll shift it again. And I know this is going off camera, but all I'm doing is rolling over and over again. I'm rolling this middle one on itself over and over again. And what it's doing is it's causing those loops to bind up and double up on themselves. I'll come in and give a close-up of this. To bind up and double up on themselves, and I'm going to keep spinning this center bamboo stick, or whatever type of stick you're using. I'm just going to keep spinning it and allow the tension to kind of wrap on that cordage. So I'll come in close and show you in detail of what I'm talking about exactly here. So hopefully you can kind of see this on the camera. I know my camera is getting a little dated. I really need to get a new one relatively soon, but such is life. But either way, hopefully you're able to see that this line is starting to kind of twist and roll up on itself here, and it's going to keep doing that until it becomes tight. So really I just want to keep twisting this whatever direction I pick, whether it was clockwise or counterclockwise, however you want to see that. I'm just going to keep rolling it over and over again until this gets really tight and has nowhere to go. Then that'll form the base of my tripod without having to get into any kind of lashing and frapping and all that kind of stuff. This makes all of that obsolete. So I'll shift the camera back and I'll just kind of quickly go through doing that, because we're going to have to get 2 of these tripods up and running, yeah? Okay, so like I say, I'm trying to position myself to not create as many shadows as possible, but you know, it's just tricky with the way the lighting is early in the day like this. But like I say, I'm just going to take this now, I'm going to pick it up, and it's really elementary. I'm just going to be rolling that bamboo stick, the middle one. I'm just going to keep rolling that over and over again. So I'll just kind of stand up to make this easier for myself, and I'll just keep twisting it until it gets to a half decent tension. And it really doesn't take a lot of turns when it comes to stuff. Like I say, as you can see, I'm pretty well set up now as a tripod. Hopefully I'll check the camera, make sure I got a good angle. If not, I'll re-record this bit. But as you can see, it's really rapid, and I've got myself a basic tripod up and running. So I'll stop, we'll shift camera angles, and we'll carry on with the next part of the build, yeah? So I thought I'd just stop and do a little close-up here and show you where, as you can see, it's all kind of bound up to itself because of the wrapping of that cordage, especially in along here and stuff, right? And when it comes to, you know, the tension you want to put here, you don't want it to be this kind of like really firm ironclad. You want to still have it where, you know, you've got the flexibility to be able to move legs and pivot things without it being a concern. But, you know, hopefully that gives you an idea of what's going on. I'm trying to get that on the camera as close as I can, where it looks like a jumbled mess of cordage just because, well, it is, but it does the purpose that it needs to do when it comes to functionally being able to secure this tripod as a unit, right? So like I say, I need to have 2 of these done off. So I'll record doing the second one, but just to show you how little time it actually takes when it comes to things without having to walk through and describe the entire process step by step, yeah? Set my loop. And when I'm out in the field if you've watched previous bushcraft videos of mine, you'll see when I'm out in the field, I use these almost every time I go out. So if you're a fan of the channel and you've watched my bushcraft content before in the past, you'll know this is very, very familiar terrain. I use these all the time. Probably good once more. Loosen that back a bit, just to slide the end out a bit. It's holding on there pretty good. Just always gets out. There we go. I just like having the legs all pretty well even. It's not critical. All this stuff is super flexible in its layout. But one way or the other, we've got 2 tripods, yeah? So, like I say, you got 2 tripods. If you're doing this out in the field and you already got, you know, the sticks that you're working with and stuff already cleaned up, as you can see, this is like a 2-minute process to get to this point. You know, I know it takes a lot longer describing everything in the video, but such is life, right? So either way, we've got these 2 now. Let's move on to the next steps, yeah? Okay, so in the previous modular Ropecraft system component we used, we formed that loop by just kind of setting it on itself and stuff, as shown in detail earlier, right? So now this one, for using it now in this regard, it's going to be a little bit different. All we're going to do is open up one of the loops on the end. We're going to pull through some of the cordage so that it forms a loop as such, and it's kind of a sliding loop, if you will. And we're going to wrap that around the top part of the tripod. So I'll shift camera angles and I'll show you kind of how elementary it is to hook this part on. Yep. Okay, so, and this is really elementary. I now just take that loop that we have that's kind of sliding on the line, and I just hook that over all 3 of those bamboo pieces, and then I just allow that loop to slide up to itself, kind of wrapping around the tight point of the tripod, if you will. And then I allow that loop to just kind of nuzzle on there as tight as it can get on. And that gives me a hanging line now. So I kind of had to do this with this really wide and low just to show it on the camera because of the camera's tripod itself. But I'll shift this back up now so you can see kind of that this is just a hanging line that should hang now in the center of the tripod's kind of base, if you will. So like I say, I'll shift the camera back and show you that. Yep. Hooked on that modular Ropecraft system component here, and it's just hanging from the center. And because it's a tripod base now, it allows me to put a half decent load on this of weight bearing, if you will, as the tripod's legs will just carry the weight of that. And as long as you kind of position this Ropecraft component, as long as you position that where it's in the center of this base as best as possible, you'll have ideal load balancing on all the different legs and stuff, yeah? But as you can see, I'm pulling down with a half decent amount of strength, and it's not going anywhere. So that just gives me that. I want to do the exact same thing now on the other tripod, yeah? And once again, I'll do kind of just a real-time example of how quick this stuff can be when you're doing it out in the field, right? Just because I know, like I say, the examples always take far longer to explain than they are to just do. But I'm just setting up the tension as best I can, so that this thing's really hunkered down. And I'm on. That's attached. And the good part about everything we've done so far is there's no knots. All of this stuff can be easily just taken apart, reverse the process of what I've done, and just pop everything back off again, yeah? But so, like I say, now we're at the point where we've got these 2 lines now hanging from our tripods, almost like you would in a cook kit and that kind of thing, you know, when you're out at a base camp and that. Pretty well identical setup. And like I say, we can do this and scale it up and down, but and you can do it with the Kevlar modular Ropecraft system I've done in the past. I actually think that's my most advanced system. I definitely recommend going and checking that one out as well. But either way, we'll just move on to the next step and kind of show you some of the options we have when it comes to advancing this further, yeah? Now to show you kind of some of the fun stuff we can do with this now. So I'm just going to take another piece of bamboo, and now because we had these modular Ropecraft system components where they had the loops on the end, it's easy enough to just turn around and take one of my pieces of bamboo, stick it through the loop, and now on the other side to turn around and just feed it through its loop. And now I'm able to suspend that stick and I can balance it out to be as level as I choose it to be here. So, you know, like I say, you can scale this up or down. Now, I'd want to probably secure this a little better than I have, but the whole idea of this video is to show you more of how rapidly I can do things like that. You know, I've done this entire setup so far without having to really do a knot, right? So, like I say, I'll kind of shift cameras and I'll come in and just show you how simple this is. And you could easily roll this up on itself if you want to have this be quick release and stuff, where I turned around and took one of the knots, just popped it in to its own system and had it where it sat a little higher. And like I say, it'll hold and secure just the same, but if I wanted this to be quick release to go, it just pops and drops, right? So it's really, really easy when it comes to how you want to kind of set this stuff up without it taking a bunch of time and knots and complexity and all that kind of stuff. I aim to get rid of all of that when I'm out in the field, right? I want to have things be rapid, simple, and easy to reacquire my gear once I'm done with whatever purpose that I wanted it to be used for. So, like I say, I'll just kind of set that back down so we're back to a level point again. And I'll adjust it and I'll come in close and I'll show you this, yeah? So, and I'll just use another stick to kind of strengthen this up because this bamboo is a little thin, but you know, like I say, you can use whatever materials you have available out in the field that you can easily harvest off the land. You know, you don't have to pack all this in, but as you can see, it was really easy to kind of double that up, right? But the thinking really is I can apply load onto this now horizontal line as such because the tripods are carrying the weight. So, you know, obviously I'm putting on thin bamboo here, so it'll bow and flex a bit, but you know, the larger you make this, the more weight and capacity you can carry. So, like I said, if there was a reason why I wanted to have it where I had this horizontal bar for some reason, you know, I have that option to have it just sitting in the center where the weight is directly sitting on the center point of balance when it comes to the tripods. So the tripods will take the load without any real significant, you know, issue. And I'm leaning my body on this pretty heavy, yeah? But I'll shift camera angles now and I'll show you kind of some of the more cooler stuff you can do with this stuff. Now with some subtle adaptations to what we've already done. Okay, so now I have 2 more of those modular Ropecraft system components because like I said, I made like 20 in the stack. So, and if you're not familiar with these, it's definitely worth going back to watch that video, yeah? But I'm just going to do the exact same thing we did earlier to brace on these whole, you know, this horizontal beam, if you will. And so I'm just going to put on a second one of these, just so we have 2 coming off of this tripod base instead of 1, yeah? And I'm doing the exact same thing. Like I say, super elementary, no knots required or any of that business. It's just get it in place and let it hang, right? Do the same with the other side. And you can see it's not a complex process by any stretch of the imagination, right? This stuff is all really, really elementary once you get the feel for it and get used to doing it. And I'm on here. Now we had this horizontal beam. First off, I'll kind of show where I'll just grab one of these bamboo rods, and I want to show that, you know, on the top of this tripod it's easy enough to just put one of these, you know, components up here as well, and I can, you know, lower the height and all that happiness so things are more level. And it's good, you can adjust the legs and kind of adjust the balance, you know, of where things are at until you find a good fit. Now I've shown in lots of previous videos where you want to turn around and use loops and those types of things to hang items. You can use this rod now as an area to attach a bunch of loops onto. In fact, I'll just go grab a loop and I'll show you the example of that before we kind of show the next step. But one of the key things you needed to kind of keep in mind with this scene was we just added on 2 additional, you know, hanging lines, if you will. We've just added that on and thrown the bar on top. So yeah, I'll just, because I'm getting sidetracked now, I'll show the example of just looping up to this bar up at the top here so you can see kind of the flexibility of what I'm talking. Okay, I just had to run in the house, grab another, you know, bit of cordage, and this one is bright orange, give it a bit better visibility and that kind of thing. So, but if you watch previous bushcraft videos of mine, you'll see, you know, I use these kinds of loops tons out in the field. I have a stack of these sit in my bag. I use them for 101 different things, but it's really elementary to kind of strap stuff up to these poles, if you will. And so all you do is kind of bring the loop over and then feed the one end through the other and pull, and that allows me to just kind of lock onto that bar. And I still have the ability to kind of slide this around a bit, but it just gives me the capacity to kind of hook onto this bar with ease, right? Now I've just got a water container here where, you know, a bit of water just to show us the example of, I can turn around and do a little lark's head knot here where all I do is create like a little dragging loop, just like we did when we hooked up the modular Ropecraft system up to the tripods. I'm doing the exact same kind of sliding loop here, and all I'm going to do now is feed that over the head of the water bottle and just allow it to have a bit of tension onto it. And now it's holding that water bottle and keeping it strapped to this pole. And like I said, it's easy enough for me to just adjust this and slide it along the line to whatever position I want to have this at. Yeah, it's really elementary in that regard. And if I want to pop my water bottle off, I just loosen that and I'm off. You know, take my drink, whatever, slip it back on, and I'm back to the races and, you know, off and running. So it's really elementary to kind of hang a bunch of gear like this. If you're wanting to set this up as like a bush kitchen or that kind of thing, you can do a lot of this kind of stuff with ease, yeah? But like I said, that was all kind of sidetracked. I just wanted to show you some of the cool stuff you could do if you put a bar across the top. You know, no knots needed or any of that business. And but we'll shift back to what we were doing earlier when it comes to having this horizontal stick and having it, you know, hanging on these drop lines, yeah? So I'll pop this down. I just wanted to show this part as the example. I'll pop this down, we'll kind of move on to the rest of the show, yeah? I'll just slide that off. And as you can see, it all comes apart easy. No knots required in any of this, right? So either way, let's move on and start using these second drop lines we put on. Okay, and like I say, currently we've got this hanging in the center of this tripod setup, but we don't have to. That's all optional. So I can turn around and shift this now, just kind of rocking the stick. I can shift it to the outside of the tripod now and have it where it's sitting against, you know, two of the legs of the tripod. I'll just pop this off and kind of, so it's not a distraction, and just show now that we're out to the outside now, and any load that we would press this way is going to help be carried by the legs of the tripod itself. Now if I take these other two drop lines that we put on here and I just slide the stick through, no, a second stick now, and slide that through, I can now create kind of a horizontal platform. And I'll just roll this to the outside of this one so it's not sitting in the center of the tripod. And you can see now, we now have this kind of doubled level surface now, the, you know, horizontal surface that we can start to make as a platform to do things with, right? So that can be extremely handy as we're moving forward. And then when it comes to the cordage, you know, you could easily lash all of these components together if you wanted to make this camp permanent. This is showing a really way to set this up really rapidly and tear it down really rapidly without having it be permanent. But as you can see, it allows me to have this kind of subtly more advanced structure now. So we've taken it to another step. And like I say, it's easy enough to just grab another one of my bamboo poles and shift this onto the top and have that as such, right? So the structure's starting to become more kind of established. So I'll shift camera angles and just kind of show this from a few different perspectives, right? Okay, so I'll try to just give this a bit of a walk around so you can get a feel for it now. As you can see, you know, now we've got two horizontal, you know, bars that are being held where, yeah, we can apply weight to those. They're not going anywhere in that regard, but it allows us to rapidly start to form tables and that type of stuff with this type of construct. And as you can see, it's a half decent width when it comes to the actual width of it. You're probably talking of, there's a space between those two horizontal beams, if you will, of maybe about 1.5 feet, 2 foot. Like I say, all of this stuff is really easy and really scalable when it comes to things of, you know, it doesn't have to be anything set. You really just use this thinking more than you do, you know, exact measurements and that kind of stuff when you're out in the field. But now when it comes to, you know, wanting to advance this and turn it into a table or something, I'll just stop and kind of settle the camera here. so that we can kind of talk about this further without me jumbling the camera all over the place. But as you can see now, this gives me a pretty good structure to start to work with. If I had short lengths of sticks, you know, I don't have a plethora of them just because I'm in my backyard, but if I was out in the field, I could easily start to turn around and put a stack of these shorter sticks across here and form a full table surface, if you will, and that would be really elementary to do. And when it comes to bracing down all those sticks rather than lashing them and stuff, I'll try to do a close-up here of this specific angle so you guys can see exactly what I'm talking about in this example. Just 2 seconds. You don't really have to even lash all these cross-beam sticks that you have. You don't really even have to lash them all in place. You can easily kind of control and hold that stuff within reason for temporary setups without having to get into all the complexity of knots and all that. So let me just zoom in and get a close-up down here and I'll show you exactly what I'm talking. Okay, so like I say, this is just that crossbeam we just laid on there, right? You know, nothing's holding it on, but this tripod leg and the other one square across from it are going to stop it from being able to roll any further, you know, out and off. And it's the same on the other side. And now if I had a stack of these sitting across here and I want to lock and brace those down a bit, it's easy enough to take another stick that I have, feed it through that loop that already exists that we put the first one through, and just feed it through and kind of allow it to lock everything in place here. I'll just slide this one on to give you a practical idea of what I'm talking. Now, if you had an arrangement of sticks that were all tight in underneath here, it's easy enough to help kind of, you know, this additional bamboo piece would just help lock all those other sticks that were, you know, going crosswise, just help lock all those in place, you know. And it's like I say, there's no knots or anything needed here when it comes to this stuff, given the nature of using the modular Ropecraft system. Yeah, so I just wanted to kind of show that part as an example, and I'll just go grab. Now, in a previous video I showed how to make kind of a off-grid kitchen sink and that kind of stuff, so I'll just pull that out and I'll show you an example of how you can scale this up to be more like you know, a bushcraft kitchen without having to drag tons of gear off into the woods. Yeah, okay, so like I said in previous videos, I showed how to make this sink for your use out in the field and that kind of stuff, and I'm just going to use this as the example. You know, in this video I had some hosing attached because this also has the ability to run a USB faucet and that kind of stuff, but one way or the other, I won't get into all the details about that, but let's just set this in place now and show you how quickly you can kind of set things up to have a kitchen environment. Just need to adjust the height of some of this stuff so that it sits more squarely, and this is all minor stuff. You just adjust different components and get it to the point where you feel that this is in a stable setup. So I'll shift camera angles, I'll come in close and I'll show you kind of, you know, what we're looking at this point in time. And all this was, just for people that haven't seen the video, all this was like I say, the sink, which I do full detailed video of there, and this was just a small piece of plywood. I cut out a hole and put a little hinge on it to make it that it's easier for me to pack around with me, and I can just set that now onto this construct easy enough. And like I say, you throw my sink into it, and you know, you obviously don't have to bring all this kit out there, but it allows me to start to kind of set up a kitchen environment with barely any gear at this point in time. Yeah, so I'll come in close and just show this, just if you haven't seen previous videos of this stuff. So like I say, just a basic kind of countertop and sink structure, right? Well, in fact, I'll just go fill this up with water, and I'll, you know, so you can see what it's like with the load in it and that kind of stuff, of how it has the capacity to handle that. Yeah, so like I say, I loaded this up with water. I think I didn't turn it all the way off on the bottom, so it's a slow leak, but normally I'd have a garden hose that straps onto this, where if you had this inside like an ice shelter or something like that, you can easily have a hose feeding out. Yeah, but I didn't go chintzy with it. There's lots of water in this container, right? I've almost got this sink filled right up to the top, if you will, and I've got a double kind of faucet locking system and all that that sits on here. But like I say, I discuss all that in how I built this sink video, but you can see that it was really easy to turn around and start to get myself a kitchen construct up and running. And like I say, if I, you know, wanted to turn around and just throw some sticks on there and have those sitting all the way across, and just fill up to this point, be easy enough to kind of form a countertop that I can start to work with and that kind of stuff, you know. But like I said, this kind of construct doesn't have to be used just to make a kitchen setup. I just wanted to show this as one of the simple examples I can do. And like I say, when it comes to this whole example, I've used what, 6 of the modular Ropecraft system components out of 20. I've barely used any of my cordage to set this entire construct up, and none of it required any knots to even get to this point, yeah? But either way, I'll kind of shift camera angles and talk about some of the other things that you can do with this kind of construct. And I thought I'd just kind of stop and show that again. As you can see, that bowl was 3/4 full, you know, and it's so it had a half decent amount of weight. You know, water's normally a heavy thing. Had a half decent amount of weight to it, and this setup handled it without issue, yeah? So either way, I'll stop and we'll start talking about the other stuff though. Okay, so like I say though, in this example, I'm showing this out as if we were to set up kind of a bushcraft kitchen and you wanted to do that really rapidly. We don't necessarily have to use this just to do a kitchen construct either. You know, you can scale these things up and down to whatever the needs are. If I used smaller, thicker pieces of wood for my tripod so it was lower to the ground, I could easily do this type of construct to form a seat that was easy enough to pick up and move around a camp without it having to be kind of long, you know, a long build time or using tons of cordage and that kind of stuff. It gives me the capacity to do all those types of things. But you can scale this up now as well, right to the point of having a shelter, where I'll just kind of pop some of this stuff off and talk about that a little further. We'll just kind of set this to the side for a second, yeah? So now this basic construct here though can also become a fantastic shelter, where if I wanted to make things a little more permanent, it'd be easy enough to turn around and, you know, do things like Canadian jam knots, where these pieces of wood are crossing each other and stuff to kind of lock and brace them a bit better, you know, and do that to all the major points. You can do that if you wanted to kind of make this more semi-permanent or permanent in your camp. This, you know, layout and design that I'm doing is all just to show you how you can do very temporary setups and have it to this level of sophistication, and at the end of your, you know, camping adventure or bushcraft adventure, you can tear all this down in a matter of minutes, and I'll show that at the end of the video of how quickly we can tear this all back down again. But it's really flexible in that regard. But you could easily turn this into kind of a shelter construct if we were using longer poles that were, you know, a little bit bigger and had, you know, slightly larger tripods. These are only 5-foot tripods with the example I'm doing here, and that gives me the ability to have everything, you know, right up at a comfortable height. But if I was to do this for, say, a shelter, and I'm using my Kevlar modular Ropecraft system, I would do maybe a couple of subtle variances different, but the main thinking of what I'm doing would be pretty well the same, where I whip together 2 tripods. And then, like I say, when it comes to the footprint now, if you notice that, I'll just try to get in here and kind of show you, if I was on the inside of this now, I've got ample room this way to house a body in here. So if I wanted to turn this more into like a shelter construct, I've already created the basic frame that's big enough to kind of have a human being inside it. I could easily attach other modular Ropecraft system components on here and have it where we had horizontal beams that were kind of more all the way down the face of both sides of this tripod if you wanted to, and have it where we can then turn around and take, you know, branches from trees and that type of stuff and start to hang it over this construct. I'll just come back out so I can stand up while I'm talking to you. I know my hair is going all over the place, such is life. I need to get a haircut pretty soon, but to give you an idea, I could put a platform here to hold my gear and have it that I'm sleeping underneath inside that little pocket, and then just build this all out with materials off the landscape and use this as kind of a framework to hang the materials on. Or if I had a tarp, I could easily throw a tarp over top of this and have it, you know, come down this side fully and come out and say to here, and have it where I widen the legs of this tripod a bit so that I've got an entrance in and out and those types of things. So I've got an area where I've got a place to store some gear that's in out of the weather that I can still access. You know, if I only wanted to make the table, say 3/4, I can still come from underneath, reach in and get all that stuff. It gives a lot of flexibility when it comes to using this type of construct, you know, when you're out in the field and being able to set things up really rapidly. You know, it's I could see it being very similar if instead of using these tripods, you were using trees as your kind of two stands on the ends and using Y branches against those trees to kind of hold up this crossbeam pole. Like I say, there's a lot of flexibility in this construct and idea, but I wanted to do the kitchen example because, you know, it's a cool example to kind of show, but you could see that with this similar setup, using very little cordage, I'm able to whip together frames and structures to get up off the dirt. And like I said, at this point in time, I've only used 6 of my modular Ropecraft system components. I have 20 of them. And I've got multiple ridgeline kits and stuff I've shown in lots of previous videos. So if I wanted to bring my Kevlar one to do more of the shelter portion and use the tarred bankline ones like I have here to do things like this kind of construct, setting up kitchens and those types of things, you know, it's really rapid. I can have all this stuff set up, you know, within an hour, you know, of having a complete camp set up. You can't normally do this level of stuff if you're doing conventional lashing and frapping and all that kind of stuff that goes on with bushcraft Ropecraft. That normally all of this stuff would take 10 times the cordage, and it would take way longer to accomplish the same results as we're achieving here. And in this construct, like I say, if I want to strengthen and stabilize this, a couple Canadian jam knots, or I think that the Americans call it an arbor knot, but you know, strap that onto a few of these key points and everything's locked and held, and you don't have to worry about it going anywhere, right? You know, so it's one of those things. Yeah, like I say, I'll kind of stop, shift camera angles, and we'll go across a couple more points, and then I'll start to wrap the video up. Yeah. So like I'm saying, if you wanted to turn around and, you know, create something like the sink, you know, I made a round one in the example I did in the video, but if you wanted to use kind of, you know, a square steam tray container or something along that lines, you know, you could easily have it work with the same kind of construct, right, where you just braced it in with sticks and that kind of stuff. So it's really flexible in that regard. But the one good part about this is I'm able to form structures, and I'm not having to use, you know, large trees and stuff when I'm out in the backcountry. You know, quite often getting small branches like this in brambles and thickets and that kind of stuff is really easy to acquire. So, you know, forming structures like this is really elementary without having to do a lot of like cutting down trees and harvesting stuff that you might feel bad about, you know, kind of killing trees and that kind of stuff when you're out in the wilderness. And, you know, I'm all about kind of leaving as small a footprint as possible when it comes to, you know, how I like to move through the woods. But you can set up these types of things where the only thing that we needed to have in this entire construct up to this point that we're seeing in the camera here is that modular Ropecraft system that I would normally have in my bag at all times, you know. So like I say, there's 1,001 options you can do here when it comes to these. You can use them to set up shelters where you have kind of a shelf, and if you were in really extreme cold weather, this shelving that I have here, when I close this in, say I was doing kind of using branches from trees and stuff, I might fill that entire top section. You know, I might fill this entire top section here with insulation and stuff to have it where the heat wasn't escaping, and, you know, put insulation on the ground and that kind of stuff. And when I'm talking insulation, I'm just talking like, you know, branches off trees and stuff, like the foliage off trees and that kind of thing, right? And just close this whole thing in where you only had a small entrance, you know, that you picked whether you wanted to go with one on the side or, you know, you open up the legs on the front a bit. It's really, really flexible of how you'd want to set this kind of construct up. But that to me is the key part of it, is I'm able to do all of this stuff without bringing in a ton of extra gear. You know, in the example with the kitchen, yeah, I got to bring in a sink, but, you know, for the better part of things, I'm able to do a lot of this stuff without bringing any additional equipment other than the basic cordage I'd normally carry. So I'll stop, I'll shift camera angles now, and I'll show you how rapid I can have this all torn down and be back to the point where I'm just ready to throw my Ropecraft or my modular Ropecraft system back into my kit, and I'd be able to just, you know, toss the branches, you know, the sticks and that kind of stuff, toss those into the bush and be able to just walk away from camp. So like I say, I'll make that kind of the final scenes, and then I'll just do an outro, if you will, and we'll wrap this video up. So like I say, when I'm done with my camp and I want to just kind of tear all this stuff down, it's really, really elementary to do. I just pop the stuff apart, and it all comes apart in a matter of seconds, right? And because we didn't use any knots to begin with, when it comes to taking this all apart and kind of getting back to the point where I just have my raw kit, it makes it really, really elementary to do so, yeah? So like I say, I've busted off one of those drop lines we had. There's the other one off. So this side, we're just back down to the basic tripod now. I'll do the same with the 2 drop lines that we put on this tripod. Pop those off. like I say, really elementary. There's no knots involved here, and it's really easy for me to reclaim everything I have. I'm back down to these 2 tripods, you know, and when it comes to those, I just reverse them back out the opposite spin that I put them in, if you will, just to keep it kind of really simple and elementary in that regard. Pop out the stick. Once you get one of the sticks out, it's easy enough to just slide the rest off. It'll straighten out where it kind of twisted up on itself, just so it's not going to go back into my bag that way. And because we did them in those loops, it's easy enough to just, and I showed this in detail in the previous video when I show exactly how you make these modular Ropecraft system components, but I just loosen up that lark's head knot and slide it back out so that I'm back to having just my single line component. I'll throw that on the ground, and it's the same with the next. You see, slide that out. And the most complicated part with this whole teardown is more just the reality of detaching that one lark's head knot that made this modular Ropecraft system form a loop to begin with. And it's really not even untying a knot per se. I mean, it is, but it isn't. You know, it's really elementary, but I'm done. We're back now where I now have all my components for my Ropecraft system that I can reclaim. All these sticks could easily just be tossed back into the field, you know, left it wherever it is. And just as simple as that, I'm done. I don't have to carry these sticks. You know, I could if I wanted to kind of bring them into an area I knew there wasn't a lot of these small sticks around. But for my situation, 99% of the environments I go into have tons of these kind of small branches and stuff. They're you know, systemic throughout the forest that I go into, so it's not normally a problem. But you know, if you wanted to save time and you wanted to move from one camp to the next, you know, I tore down the tripods at the end. You wouldn't necessarily have to do that. You could have easily just collapsed the three legs of the tripod down so that they were, collapse the 3 legs of the tripod down so they were just in a stack. You know, you left your cordage strapped to it and just bring it to your next camp location, you know, if you wanted to kind of take the sticks with you. But to me, that's all kind of minor stuff, right? But I'll stop and shift camera angles and we'll wrap this video up, yeah? All right, so in 30 seconds later, I just daisy chained together using that lark's head knot all those 6 individual components that I had back into the main bundle, so it's all just one length of cordage that I can use later on when I'm out in the field. And it's just that easy. But hopefully you enjoyed this video, you know, and hopefully it gives you a taste of kind of some of the more advanced techniques and usages, if you will, of those modular Ropecraft systems that you can do when you're out in the field. Like as I find, generally speaking, I normally find it replaces about 99% of the, you know, the knot tying and that kind of stuff that I would need to do. That most of that stuff just becomes a thing of the past. So like I say, if you don't know exactly how to build these modular Ropecraft systems out, I do full detailed videos, you know, previously on my channel. I think it's about 4 or 5 videos before this one. You know, I did a few kind of free merch videos and stuff where companies send me stuff, ask me to review them and that kind of thing. But like I say, if you enjoy this type of content, please like, share and subscribe, and thanks for watching. Yeah, cheers.